Cutting Through the Matrix, discussing some of the problems that India is having. You know, whenever they claim they're going to help third world countries, I really gag, because they've destroyed so many third world countries, and, well, they'll always reap profits out of it as they're doing it. But it's through the United Nations now. The United Nations is such an amazing organization that very few people speak about. They read about it all the time, but they don't really know exactly what it is. They think it's some kind of negotiating place. And that was the propaganda that they used when they set it up, where different leaders would go from different countries and settle their differences. In actual fact, it is a supra-government. It's above government, but it's also a private corporation. And this strange negotiating place also has a World Bank under it. It's going to be the distributor of all currency for the planet. That's what it's deemed to be. That's what it's set up to be. It also has a department to deal with every facet of your life in every single country. Most of the laws that have been passed through your books in every country for the last 30 years have come initially from the United Nations, this private organization. You see, in reality, socialism was never decided. It was never deemed to be for the public. Socialism is to be a world run by experts. Therefore, it would be privately owned. Democracy was to go out after it had been used to con the people. Now, I've read about that before, even from the Club of Rome. There's an article here bringing in the United Nations and one of its great cons as well, from the Mail Online. It's called The Great Carbon Credit Con. Why are we paying the third world to poison its environment? It tells you about this place in India. In the fields around this giant chemicals factory in Gujarat, the barren soil smells of paint stripper, and the water from the well makes you gag. So why has it been given tens of millions of pounds of taxpayer-funded United Nations green reward points? Now, number one, what's the UN doing, getting money from us and dishing it out anyway, this private organization? Think about that. Then it says, which are traded hungrily on the financial markets at huge profits. So these green reward points or carbon trading points are traded by the big boys, and they're raking in profits. Well, guess who's paying for all that? You boys at the bottom. This is by Nadine Guri, 1st of June 2009. All these links will be up on my site at the end of the show. Then it tells you about the farmers, faces wizened, brown from hours in the harsh Gujarati sun, lower a bucket into a well, it's a solid brick cylinder, 100 feet deep, sun is high, etc., etc. They're giving you the usual visual stuff. And then they draw it up, and it smells again like, well, paint thinner, basically. And the water all around that region in this factory smells the same way. This has happened all over India, by the way. Most of the freshwater wells are all poisoned now, thanks to the United Nations and all of its great scams and schemes. They're not stupid at the top. Always keep that in mind. She says, we can't irrigate our crops with it. She says, it's the water of death that kills most crops we put in. And then it goes on down the page to start to explain what's actually happened. It says, but this is more than a tale of big business versus poor farmers in the third world. GFL is part of a worldwide, this is the factory, a worldwide carbon trading scheme centered in London, the city, of course, which is supposed to be helping to save the planet from global warming. On paper, the scheme, which was ratified under the Kyoto Agreement and supervised by the United Nations, looks like an efficient way to cut global carbon emissions. However, a live investigation has exposed a series of major failings and loopholes in the scheme. 4 years ago, GFL installed technology to reduce the greenhouse gases it produces and was given vast financial reward by the United Nations. As I say, what the heck are they dealing with this in the first place, this negotiating group, supposedly? A UK company was also given considerable sums for investing in the project. However, far from being a flagship green factory, GFL stands accused of poisoning the local environment. Our own extensive tests by an independent laboratory showed dangerous contaminants in land and water around the factory, chemicals that match these pollutants introduced by GFL. Interviews with the people living nearby reveal their livelihoods and health have been severely affected. we found that the auditors who were supposed to verify the carbon savings were paid for by the GFL themselves. So inspectors are GFL. A stipulation of the scheme, and they checked only for greenhouse gases, caring little about other pollution. In a further ironic twist, we discovered that GFL used some of the money it gained from the United Nations to build a factory making Teflon and caustic soda. Both processes are massively polluting. Meanwhile, in the UK, one of our biggest industrial companies is able to claim it has offset its own pollution by supporting GFL. Boy, they never fail at the top, eh? One massive con after another. And all these greenies thinking we're going to save the planet by global carbon taxing. The fools, eh? The fools. They always, so many fools, you know. You always got to have fools to follow to make something work. Yet it remains oblivious to and unconcerned about the serious accusations being made against the Indian factory. This is only one across the whole of India. These hypocrisies aren't isolated to GFL. The United Nations carbon offsetting scheme is filled with similar examples of companies with poor environmental and human rights records being financially rewarded. As you dig below the surface, it would appear that the United Nations program, with backing and finance from Britain, is as polluted as the questionable companies it chooses so generously to reward. I'll be back with more of this con game after these messages.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
I'm Alan Watt, and this is Cutting Through the Matrix, reading an article about the con game of carbon trading, basically. It's a fantastic scheme because you're trading invisibilities across the planet. Nothing's really. Huge bags of air, in a sense. It's too outside of the concrete way of thinking that we have to even comprehend. That's why they're doing it. It's a wonderful scam. Beautiful scam. And it will also regulate trade. You see, they don't want new businesses coming up from the bottom. They'll get hammered with carbon taxes. That is the socialist way. Remember, government is to control everything, eventually. That is the Fabian mandate. To stop you people coming up that haven't been authorized. It says, in the middle of the city of London is a large, anonymous-looking building, home to the European Climate Exchange. Now, I should say at the beginning of this, too, last year it mentioned that the European Climate Exchange Commission handed out to the big multi-billionaire international corporations millions of pounds worth of free stock in this carbon that they could exchange amongst them. And they're trading it already before it even started, making profits off it, believe it or not. It's all a big racket. It said about 98% of the carbon emissions trading in Europe is done in this office. 98%. Billions go through there. With more than 25 million tons of carbon traded daily. Can you believe this? 20 million tons of nothing is traded daily. This is better than the stock market. That was also a casino, a con game, regulated and run by a few at the top. Last year, this market was worth £80 billion worldwide, and it's set to grow to £97 billion this year, despite the recession. Chief Executive Patrick Burley meets us in the glass panel reception. He points out where climate protesters camped on the ground, the doorstep during the G20 protests in March. I care just as passionately about saving the planet as they do, he says, but the difference is that I believe in environmentalism and capitalism, and they can converge. See? Inside his office, the trading screen flashes with yellow, red, and green figures. In the office next door, traders bash the phones doing deals for clients all over the world. It's no different to any other business trading floor, except no one here is selling an actual commodity. Isn't that beautiful? It's worth billions of pounds. There's nothing there. Here traders sell our planet's future, and you better believe they do. Our planet's future, in the form of carbon credits, because that's going to bring us all down, all of us down, under a multitude of laws. These are part of international attempts to limit greenhouse gases as UN attempts, and each credit represents a ton of CO2. Utter farce. Companies that cut their emissions gain credits. If, on the other hand, they exceed their quotas, they have to acquire credits. The credits are traded on markets such as the ECX and have become such an established part of the financial world that trading involves Europe's biggest banks, of course they do, including RBS and Barclays. Until the global slowdown, carbon was one of the most profitable commodities. Of nothing, remember, nearly doubling in value between 2007 and 2008, thanks to the greenies,